And welcome to Coronavirus Podcast 2. This is just us rambling into the internet for everybody out there in Rangers, Urban Agogi and Rantland, I guess. In the virtual planet-spanning studio with me, I've got Harlequin.
Hello, it's me, Harlequin. I am here with
Okay.
my pen.
Yeah. I'm just going to put in a notice into the chat just to say if you want to jump in, let us know. So we're
Please
live.
come and join us, but we're recording it. Because that's the nice thing to do.
Yeah, so yeah, we've probably got people listening live. So this is being recorded. Hopefully we've got these sound settings sorted out from last time. It sounds like it when I'm playing it back.
Apologies for the sound settings last time.
Yeah, it was my fault. It's an OBS setting rather than any setting on the microphones.
Oh, okay.
So it led to it being very crackly. But it does this weird thing if you don't set up the microphone to the right hertz frequency for some reason. Maybe it's just a Linux thing.
Could be. Don't know.
So if you're going to record in OBS, do a little 2-minute recording and then listen to it back. Make sure the sound doesn't sound really awful. And if it does, work out which microphone it's on, go into the settings for that and set up the hertz rating slightly differently. Usually only have 1 or 2 options. So just set it to the other one and generally it resolves itself.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's all right. Yes. Anything happened exciting in the last week, Mr.
Well,
B?
I've been shut down and furloughed from work for the last week. So I've had a whole week to sit around and just go, holy shit, at statistics and stuff. And I'm going to try and stop doing that now. But that's why there hasn't been very much in the way of output. Because every day has been this hypnotic watching numbers slowly creep up, which is very ghoulish.
Yes, it is quite, it's very distracting, isn't it? It's very off-putting as well.
Yeah, it just sort of like locks you in your seat and you don't tend to do anything. So, I mean, I've done little bits, I've done sort of really minor household tasks that I'd be doing if I was going to work anyway. But I haven't really maximised my time. And since I want to launch the culture on April the 1st, which is a scant few days away, including today, I've got 3 days to get some content out to you guys regarding the culture, set up the channel and start uploading videos to it.
Yeah, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, so the culture, you see, like the K with the arrows on each leg, it's got 4 main sections, you see.
I like it.
So you got your church of server stuff, which is all about your psychological and spiritual, in inverted commas, development.
Yes.
Where you just go, right, okay, what I'm basically doing is saying we need to be better humans for one of the smart things to turn up. And how do we do that? And how do we reconfigure society? Then you got Project Morlock, which is all about upskilling yourself, just in case Church of Server completely fails and we slide into the Dark Ages. Then you've got, there were 4 bits. I know I had it all down. Then you got like basically
Haven't you got a big poster?
Big what?
Haven't you got a big poster in front of your desk with like your 4 legs on it with all written out?
No, I haven't. I should have. I should have a little laminated thing. I think the other one was kind of like a gear review type thing. And then I think Project Morlock was more survival. Then there was sort of like a gear review type thing, like handy gear that doesn't cost an absolute fortune, kind of like the whole Mars thing. Make, adapt, reuse, and salvage. We went with salvage at the end instead of steal. I liked steal a lot more, but salvage, you can't alienate people with your choice of language. So it's all that. So there's this whole Mars pattern thing, sort of cheap tech, how to reuse stuff, how to do the nuts and bolts of, the nuts and bolts of kit. And then there was a let's take over thing, sort of like a Black Panthers for the 21st century, but with less guns. I'm not saying guns aren't a handy thing, and if there was somebody out there that wanted to do a sort of gun safety video, or like our own, sort of like from around the world. But that was also going to be the other thing about the culture. We're going to try and work out how to get people recompensed fairly out of the amount of money that we take in via Patreon.
Out of the stuff.
So I don't know. I don't know what's a better idea. Do we just keep the Rangers Patreon running because there are people already subscribed to that, and just fold it into the pot for the culture, which I'm more than happy to do. And if people want to see an expenses type thing, then they can.
A balance.
Yeah, sort of like money in, money out type thing. You know, the idea is that you know, if we could get just 1 million people, that's not very many people worldwide.
No. It's drastically less than 1%.
Oh, it's something really stupid, like 0.00015% or something daft. Yeah, so the idea was to have sort of like, you know, the whole symbol for the culture with the K with the arrows on each end was that there was going to be an arrow pointing at the back of the K. And if you do that, then it looks exactly like a transistor, which is like the quantum leap point, you know, from where we go from
modern world.
You know, diodes and shit to the transistor. And as soon as you got the transistor, once you know how that works and what it's for, I mean, a transistor, if you're listening, don't be weirded out by us using any technical terms. All will be explained. And if we don't explain something properly, just get in touch and we will. So the purpose of a transistor is to change the path of electricity based on the voltage of that electricity coming into the transistor. So it's sort of like a bimetallic strip in your kettle. When that gets too hot, it switches off your kettle. That's a kind of transistor in and of itself. But then, you know, and transistors were, the prequel to the transistor was the valve. So that as soon as the valve built up a certain amount of current, it then switched to a different thing, which is why they have to warm up before they work. You know, like capacitors in a way. But the transistor was a jump forward, and pretty shortly after the invention of the transistor, they managed to put a bunch of them on a single piece of silicon, which is the first silicon chip, the first microprocessor, the first, you know, chunk of a circuit board that's capable of making decisions depending on the input. So, yeah, and then computers happened really quickly after the microchip. I think it was about, you know, well, computers already existed prior to the microchip, but computers that people could afford came about as a result of the microchip. And it's the democratization of that technology from the late 70s through to now, you know, over 50 years, you know,
which has made all this possible.
Which has made our ability to communicate and, you know, produce media and stuff for you even vaguely feasible. So given that we can make television, and given that we can make films, we can, you know, produce documents that can go all the way around the world without too much expense, you know, perhaps we should.
Yeah.
For the betterment of mankind. Yeah.
No, well, I've had a fun week I've done lots of university stuff. Probably not as much as I should have done, but I've done some university stuff. And I have... What else have I done? Sort of fiddled with gardening stuff, I think. Got the cats from being rained on. That was nice of me. I let a bunch of bats out of my house, and I tried to clean up a little bit. It didn't go too well, but I got a bit done.
Are you guys in lockdown in Oz?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we have been anyway, because I went, no, we're not doing this. So once we went, no, this is not happening, then we just went, yep, we're all going to sit at home and find stuff to do. So the schools have officially been closed. The university was closed before the schools were, but I'm on distance education anyway, so it doesn't make a difference to me. And the schools have all been put on lockdown, so there's no access to... They brought the Easter holidays forward. By a week. Oh, excuse me, yawning. They brought the Easter holidays forward by a week, and then they've now shut down bits and pieces. So basically, they're saying, like, you know, there's now penalties for going camping and stuff over Easter, and they're saying, like, you know, if you don't need to go out, then you shouldn't be going out finally.
So the pubs all shut.
As far as I know, they have. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit weird. They didn't shut the pubs for like a whole week, and then now I think they have shut the pubs for now. I don't know. I don't really care. I don't really go there. That was something that's interesting. Something interesting I found out. Okay. No, two interesting things I found out. I'll do them in order. So when Boris Johnson was talking about herd immunity, okay, that ties into the lowering the curve thing. And I didn't realise that. Someone had to explain it to me, and I didn't know that. But what happens is if you lower the curve enough to make it so that the emergency services can cope with the virus, then what you're doing is actually implementing herd immunity. And the opposite of that is if you have lockdown and you don't let anyone to get it, and you don't try and you try and prevent everyone from getting it, and you don't end up with herd immunity, then you have to do a vaccine against it. So you have to basically vaccinate everyone to give them herd immunity, which I didn't know. That was interesting. The other one, which has caused me a kerfuffle this evening, was I was watching a YouTube video, which I don't know if we put in last week's one or not, but I'll put it in this week's notes. Was about where flus and viruses come from. So where do flus and viruses come from? And the answer is all flus and viruses that infect humans. It's going to start playing automatically, isn't it? Shut up! Don't play. Shut up! Don't load. So viruses and flus and all these things all come from animals, right? So all flus come from all influenza viruses come from aquatic water wading birds. So that's like ducks and gulls and albatrosses and things like that. And it starts off as a gut bacteria, and then what happens is it transfers over to domesticated animals, and it transfers to humans, and that's where it gets really dangerous. And someone decided to have an argument over this with me. So I decided to quote the CDC at them. I haven't got a response so far. That was just like non-tool user interface. And it was just like, you should know better than to ask silly questions. I'm going to send that to you specifically, Zach, instead of going it anywhere else. And you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
There's that one.
Where is it?
Yeah, so if you're gonna, if you get it in your private messages, so if you're going to have a silly conversation with someone on the internet, then you should have some ammunition. Here's some ammunition to have. This can make everyone just shut up. You can go read the CDC page about avian influenza in birds, and you can go listen to Dr. Michael Greger on pandemic prevention, infectious diseases, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Excuse the channel that's on. It's the weirdest channel that's uploaded on ever. But the podcast, or the guy talking for an hour, is like he's quoting CDC and World Health Organizations and all the rest of that stuff. And it's not. It's like that thing about conspiracy theories, which you always say. There's the plain simplicity of the situation. It's just the world does stupid shit, and we have to deal with the response to that because we did stupid shit. Not that there's like an overarching, it's not like someone is in power, name the person who you want to invoke as being scary, and then blame them for everything, so you have an excuse to put them in a death camp.
Well, we've got that kind of ruling in the UK.
We don't need any more death camps. All we need to do is people who actually knowledge the science behind this stuff, and then go, oh yeah, science says such and such. I don't need to go and invent, bullshit stories and woo-woo and woohoo and voodoo and all the rest of it to go and get around this problem.
Yeah. Well, the UK have instituted all kinds of crazy shit where they can physically detain someone, whether it's down to coronavirus or not, and section them if they need to.
That's lovely.
Well, I can see where it comes about. I can see why you might want to say, oh, this person needs to go into lockdown. Because if you've got a nut job running around, given that you've got what you've got to remember is our psychiatric care in the UK has been dialed way, way, way back. There's almost no community psychiatric care at all, to all intents and purposes. Yeah. We've kept looking after the people that are sort of that were, dangerous to the public up until now, until recently, and then we dialed it all down so we're not admitting any new patients. So I can see, again, this is the incompetence level. When you see something that could be utilised for bad, what our government doesn't have is what you need is a sort of a Chicken Little department that can sort of look at something and say the sky's falling in. So you need to announce your legislation, and then you need really sneaky people to figure out how you might abuse that if you're a tyrannical fascist.
Yes.
So this, but I think what they've done is they want to be able to bang up people who have claimed to have coronavirus in order to threaten people or shoplift or get away from the police. Yeah. So that legislation had to be brought in. It's just been clumsily worded. Now, I'm not excusing the idiocy of the wording, and lots of people, lots of legal scholars have thrown up their hands and gone, "This is stupid. This could be abused." What I'm saying is our government isn't smart enough to set it up with that in mind.
It's purely just
idiocy.
They've just purely written a bullshit bit of law.
Well, a conveniently worded bit of law that allows them to do what they think they need to do, but it's so open-ended as in that it's open to abuse. You know, it only takes one government advisor saying, "Oh yeah, if Greta Thunberg visits, we can bang her up under this new COVID-19 legislation because we think we can pretend that we think she might have it."
Yeah.
You know, in order to shut someone up, you could then utilise that legislation. But yeah, so all sorts of crazy stuff's come in. You know, very short-termism from virtually every government around the world, and terrifyingly so, given that the World Health Organization were like, "Look, we don't use the word pandemic lightly. You know, we're not into frightening people. You know, we're into sort of like saving their lives. That's the point. That's why everybody gives us money, so we can spot and do research on this shit. So there is a central repository for information." But what's happened is every single country on Earth has kind of closed its borders in panic. And what they've essentially done is locked those people, you know, locked the virus in their country with them. So yeah, that's kind of frightening. And that's led to the sudden, you know, horrific spike in deaths. You know, crappy healthcare provision for the poor is what's going to kill more people than anything else. You know, bad information being put out. Particularly one fairly damaging piece of information that, although yes, it's always going to make the headlines. You know, The Guardian reporting that if you go on a ventilator, you've got like a 50% chance of survival.
Yeah.
Which they didn't need to do. There's ways of massaging that out and actually giving people hope if they do go onto ventilation. You know, but the weird thing is they're acting like a ventilator. I mean, this is what's going to overturn the medical industry more than anything else. Being able to price gouge in peacetime, if you see this virus as a war, has led the medical community to just like the medical manufacturing community to just up the cost of everything, claiming all sorts of stupid research stuff. And it turns out that medical ventilators just aren't that complicated. You know, there's a valve, there's a certain amount of air pressure. Every so often it opens that valve, forcing air into the lungs, and then switches off again in the manner of a breath. So it's basically like an automated air balloon going up and down, forcing air into the patient's lungs. You know, that's essentially a pair of electronically governed bellows.
Yeah, well, it's exactly the same as what you do with a pump bag.
And how the medical community
all it is a control mechanism for controlling the pump bag.
And the medical suppliers have basically shot themselves in the foot by trying to restrict access to this, you know, stuff and make it all very much closed source. So as soon as we hit into a war footing, you're finding that any manufacturer with any kind of metal and plastics manufacturing ability can turn out one of these things. And the cost of them is just radically lower. Which means that nobody's going to need to buy any ventilators for a very long time. As soon as they stop getting used for the coronavirus stuff, they'll throw away the bits that may have been contaminated, but the actual pump and regulator system can be sterilised. And there'll be hundreds of thousands of ventilators just sitting in mothballs waiting around. So hospitals are going to be better funded as a result. A lot of this hospital equipment isn't very complicated. It's just that nobody wants to make it. And so you get a few manufacturers charging an absolute arm and a leg, like the company that was making the ventilator valves. And in Italy, they just 3D printed the valves.
Yeah.
That was the thing they were short of. So a company like Dyson, say, can swing into action immediately and produce loads of ventilators. As soon as they get checked out, they meet an ISO standard, you're good. So I foresee a lot of medical equipment being open source processed. If it can be 3D printed or manufactured by some other manufacturing process, it will be over the next few months. But, you know, it is bringing up the case for universal basic income and universal healthcare.
Yeah, universal basic services, which is like healthcare and access to all.
Universal healthcare, just stick an extra % on sales tax in every state in America if you've got to fund it. Everything becomes 1% more expensive because it's absolutely necessary. Especially in a pandemic. I mean, people are already dying because they don't have health insurance in America. And one of the fun things about health insurance is it's actually dependent on employment status as well. So if you're unemployed, your health insurance, even though you may well have paid it for the year, is suddenly invalid. So given that they're firing lots of people in America because the stimulus package is taking forever to come through, you know, that's a thing. You know, so lots of people are unemployed. They had something like 500,000 people apply. No, it's 3.3 million people applied for unemployment benefit in the States in the last week.
Yeah.
500,000 people applied in the UK.
I know it's jumped, like they crashed the system over here. I know because they brought out a new measure for a new start, and then people have just been laid off. Like everyone casual has just basically been laid off in the country. Yeah. And lo and behold, it crashed the Centrelink system. So the people who do the dole it crashed their system overnight.
Yeah.
For about 3 days running.
Yeah.
It was down. And people were then subsequently they couldn't ring up to go and register. They're actually trying to go into offices, into the Centrelink benefit office, and go and line up at the benefit office. And it's just like, well, what are you doing lining up in a benefit office with everyone who's, old, crook, otherwise, da da da? It's like, this doesn't work. So how does the government provision change how the hell you access this thing? If the website crashes, you can't access it. You can't access telephone line because that crashes. And we don't want you lining up in front of an office, because we don't want everyone communicating, everyone giving this disease to one another. And what the hell do you do? Yeah. No. But I think it's broken the back. I think it's broken the back of what's happening. Yeah.
So it's like all the things that we improved in, say, the 50s and 60s across the world, like the welfare state and stuff like that, the NHS, have all been undermined over the last 20 or 30 years. Yeah. And we're now in a situation where, this is what we needed it for. But I'm all in favour of saving a shed load of money every year and just giving people UBI.
Yeah, and it's not, that's the whole thing. It's very easy to turn around and say, well, look, this is what we actually need, and that's what it costs, and that's the end of it. Just do it.
Yeah, well, it's actually cheaper than paying welfare.
Yeah.
You can set an amount of money that everybody below a certain threshold gets, and the threshold could be quite high. So, if you earn less than, say, £20,000 or 40,000 Australian dollars, or more, or you could say 80,000 Australian dollars or £40,000, then the moment you go over that threshold, you lose UBI because you just don't fucking need it. At no point will you need it, and then you can always reactivate it in times of national stress and say, well, you can open up UBI because you're earning zero now, and that is automatically, that's one phone call or basically one notification. It could be the responsibility of your employer. But if you had a certain amount of UBI and you sort of said, right, okay, there's a rent cap, there is a maximum you can charge for rent in any given area, for however many bedrooms or whatever, or however many square feet of space, and that's the maximum you can charge. And you set it up like that so that you don't allow inflation to completely invalidate UBI. You just introduce a legal thing where if the price of something goes up by more than 1%, 0.5% a year, then it's investigated.
Yeah.
And if it just has become more expensive to manufacture, legitimately, then that's rubber stamped and you can go on. But certain things like physical space, for renting, bills, those are all under investigation if anything goes up by 0.5% in a year.
Yeah. And all that stuff should get cheaper. That's the whole thing.
But also, people that would be getting UBI would probably spend all that money anyway. So that's money going back into the economy, and therefore, eventually, it all trickles down so that nearly all of it gets paid in tax after enough transactions. So it's like fiscal stimulus as well. And I know people are out there going, "Well, people just not work." It's like, well, people don't work now. You can wriggle around in the benefit system.
Yeah, and what's worse than that is the people who are going to work and being paid a lot of money to do something that is just doing nothing, but is also wasting the times and lives of these people. The majority of people who go to work don't do anything that's actually useful. And if we employed them doing something useful, a lot of the problems would go away. And even if we don't employ them to do something useful, if they just stopped doing what they were doing and wasting all these bloody resources, then it would be, the world would actually be a better place.
Well, it's like how many models of cell phone are launched every year. That I don't think cell phone design is necessarily pushing innovation. You can have innovation outside of there being millions of different types of things, thousands of different types of shoes, 500 types of t-shirt. I think, it's our this sort of fake abundance, because the resources all have to come from somewhere. And we're slowly running out of those resources. And it's just like, okay, we need to in some way radically overhaul the way we look at the world. Because if the people that provide, the encouragement to these companies to produce all this shit, if everybody's like, if basically everybody just went, no, I'm not doing that. I mean, why isn't there a store that's just like ethics, that just has ethics? Okay, so we sell everything. We're a bit. Imagine something a bit like Muji. I don't know if you have Muji in Australia.
No, I don't.
It was like a Japanese unbranded sort of like, it's a bit hipsterish, but nothing carried a brand. But generally, when you looked at something, you looked at it and went, yeah, that's probably Muji, because the design was really good and it didn't have any brands, and everything was a little bit more expensive. But if you could have a store that was like that, where there wasn't any brand, but you could go in and buy, say, t-shirts and socks and pants and stuff, and they just went, right, okay, so this is we sell everything, but none of it has a brand, but everything is ethically sourced. It would just be a lot easier. And they didn't try and charge you an arm and a leg. Like, there's no way a t-shirt costs you 50 quid.
No.
But conversely, there's no way a t-shirt should cost you £1.
Yeah.
If the t-shirt you just bought cost you £1, unless it was a second-hand one at a charity shop, then somebody got exploited. Sort of like, so where is the point at which those people aren't being exploited? It's probably about sort of like the £5 or £6 level for a t-shirt. A pair of socks should probably cost you about £2. So, and I think there should be a lot more in the way of resale of electronics and stuff like that. Not many people ever bother to review old models of things to see if they're still viable. And that's one of the things I'll be doing with the culture.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, it doesn't. I don't think it harks to most people. So one of the things that I've been talking about in the Discord over the last day is audio recorders, because I'm wanting to look at getting a better audio setup to do cool stuff with. Go and watch. What's the name of that? Steve Fidarius is the guy who did it. What's the name of the thing?
Oh, the 30-day film school.
It's How to Learn Filmmaking Fast Without Film School.
Yeah, can you bang the link into our chat, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes.
So, how to...
Essentially, it's a really great video that gives you all the exercises that this particular filmmaker did when he was at film school for 3 years. And if you do one of these exercises every day, it's about 45 minutes to an hour per day.
Yeah.
So you could go nutso on it and just say, right, I've got a week off. I'm going to do 4 of these exercises a day. And inside a week, you'll understand all the technical aspects of filmmaking. But it is a very good video.
Getting an audio recorder, and like the things basically like what you need to set up. So you need a decent tripod, you need a decent audio recorder, some good microphones. But the thing is that most people aren't looking at like what can I buy second hand or what is available cheaply on the used market. It's the same thing with laptops. We don't buy a second hand laptop, so they should do. Because there's no need for us to go. There's no need for thousands of people have to go and buy, millions of people have to go and buy a brand new laptop, because the ones they've already got,
Well, I mean, if you go and have
they need to be built properly,
Yeah, I mean, if you go into, say, a PC World or a computer showroom, and you look at the specifications of these laptops, just about the only difference is that some of them will have halfway decent graphics cards.
Yeah.
That's about it. Maybe you get like a Ryzen graphics processor in it.
Yeah.
And you're still looking at, if you go into PC World, sort of when you start looking at the RAM, it's sort of like 4 gig, 8 gig. 8 gig maximum to buy it over the counter and just hand over your money and walk out with it. You never really get 16 or 32 gig laptops. But when you look at something like an X230, you can upgrade it to 16 gig of RAM. It's got like a quad core, i5 processor. It'll do everything, 1080p film editing. It'll do, you can do graphic design on it. You can use it as your desktop, surfing the web, entertainment PC. The spares for them are cheap as dirt, so you can buy replacement batteries for about 15 quid. You can buy extra memory for it, docking stations, all kinds of shit. And they're just really handy. And, this one I'm looking at, how much was it? It was originally $79.99, but I got it on sale. The one that I'm using right now to record this.
Yeah.
I think I got it for about 63 quid.
And if a laptop does not suit you, for whatever reason, if the laptop does not work, then go look at the S series Lenovo ThinkStations, which you can pick up for like a couple of $100 Australian, and they will do anything you want them to do.
Yeah.
The full size system, great. Just go and pack it under a desk somewhere and just send files to go and do stuff.
Yeah. Oh, while we're on the subject of laptops, I found the ultimate laptop building software called Yumi.
That's right.
With which you can actually construct the software. You install the software on your desktop, and it builds you a multi-boot USB stick. So it'll format it. And you can install as many operating systems or flavors of that operating system as you like. It's very good and really easy to use. And how I know it's really easy to use? I managed to use it. So if someone that isn't technical can just sort of like fire it up and create a multi-boot USB stick and then build a multi-boot laptop using it in under an hour, then, that's how long it'll take you to download the operating systems, to put them on the Yumi stick once you've installed Yumi, and then to install it onto said laptop or desktop that you're wanting to build. So if you want to do anything with computers, basically, or you're going to fix computers or fix your own computers, a Yumi stick is pretty much a definite. You've got to go get it, and it's free. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit like the cameras that I use for my media. They're all really, relatively speaking. I mean, my T3i cost me, including a kit lens, about 200 quid. And that was 5 years ago. You could probably buy the same sort of setup for about 150 quid now. I mean, that would be used. They're not making them anymore. But the T3i, if you're going to learn, there just isn't anything in its class.
Well, I mean, you can buy them in Australia for $250. So
yeah, 125 quid.
That's 125 quid, yeah. And
even if you can only find the body, I'd say go and pick up a lens. Something. A kit lens is really good because it gives you just a wide range. You get a little bit of zoom on the kit lens. You get autofocus and image stabilization on the Canon kit lenses, and all those are very cool things to have. And then you can branch out. And the one thing that I've taken away from the photography and filmmaking industry is, you date the camera, but you marry the lenses. So you may well end up upgrading the body long before, but in the meantime, you'll probably pick up another couple of lenses to try out. But with the EF mount that comes on the Canon and the EFS mount, it's a very, very popular mount. So you can buy quite a lot of different manufacturers' lenses that will fit on that, or you can buy an adapter to adapt most lenses. Once you know who the manufacturer is and what mount that you want, a lens ring can cost you anything from 3 quid to 10 quid. Or if you want an adapter that will allow you to autofocus with the other lens, that's going to be a bit more expensive. But manual lenses are dirt cheap. You can pick up a manual CCTV lens that will fit on an EF mount for about 25 quid. But that would be a very manual, very cheap lens. But it would give you the ability to make film pretty easily.
Yeah.
So
And I
yeah,
mean, like, you've got, the microphones that you get out of China. It's whatever the Rode one is. It isn't a Rode microphone. It's a perfect microphone for pointing things.
oh, the Tacstar as a shotgun mic.
The Taxstar.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I'm
Taxstar
also
is a
a
shotgun mic.
huge fan of the Boya BYMM1, which is a little bit like the Rode Micro Pro shotgun mic. They're really good, about 20 quid. Nice little mount, nice quality of recording. It's really nice. So that's a really cheap alternative. Or the Purple Panda if you want a lavalier mic. The Purple Panda's, if you want to listen to the quality of that, the Purple Panda's the one I've been using for most of Urban Agogi. From about 10 episodes in, it switches over to the Purple Panda mic. And that's just perfect. It comes with its little windsock and every adapter you'll ever need to hook it into a phone or a tablet or a standard, recordings unit, a little field recorder or something like that. But so the budget end of stuff always turns up really easily. I mean, things like ring lights used to cost hundreds of dollars, and now you can pick one up for like £7.
Yeah.
LED panels are getting cheaper and cheaper. Even sort of more or less professional LED panels you can get for under £100 now. So all the filmmaking stuff is becoming way, way cheaper, and I will be reviewing a lot of the cheap, because I don't buy expensive stuff. I think the most expensive thing I've bought that I could have bought something cheaper with, or cheaper than, is probably the Tascam DR60 Mark II.
Yeah, which has been, that's what I was looking. I wasn't looking at your one. I was looking at I was looking at see what was available second hand for Tascam. Looking at audio recorders and what was available. There seems to be heaps of them available for very, very cheap.
Loads of them. I mean, the little pocket ones are pretty good. You can mount them. They do have mount points, the Tascam ones, so you can mount the whole thing on top of your camera in the flash shoe, and then run a cable out to the microphone input of the T3i. So you can get two recordings basically. You run the headphone jack to the T3i, and then you can run the USB to headphone hack if you've got Magic Lantern. So you can actually switch on the headphones through USB, and then you can listen to it live. So not only is the camera recording it, but you're also listening to it, and also the sound recorder is recording it to a separate SD card, which is really handy because I have fucked up sound before on the camera and then been able to reconstitute the whole edit from salvaged sound from the voice recorder.
Yeah.
So more than one sound recording is always a good thing, because sound is 50% of how people relate to your video.
Yeah, which is, it comes up again and again and again in all these things. If the audio is good, then people will listen. If the audio is crap, they'll just turn off.
Yeah. It's the bane of my existence, because the sort of thing I normally ask of YouTube, it's a really odd question. And you'll get, really good sound, but the person will be speaking in Russian. Or you'll get really terrible sound and it will be someone speaking in English, shooting it as if they're shooting it for Instagram in portrait mode off their phone with terrible sound. And it's just like, I needed to know how to do this. Or you get someone demonstrating the fact that they've cracked it but not telling you how to do it. That's really annoying.
Yes.
That's really annoying. Demonstration of this working on this. And it's like, why do I want to see a demonstration? You could just say, it works, this is how I did it. It's a way more useful video. But yeah. But there are other sort of camera and voice recorder options and stuff. There's loads of stuff out there. But, I've been lucky enough to hit exactly the right thing on a couple of times first time. Mostly thanks to Professor Hegulon, who is a person that I know who has a slight imbalance of OCD features, and you can say he's one of those people that loves to research electronic gizmos. So you can idly say to him, I'm thinking of getting a thing that does this, and then you can leave him for a couple of days and he'll come back, and it's down to him that I've got a Lenovo X230 and a Tascam voice recorder and a Canon T3i, because he knows his stuff. So I pass that on to you. There must be about 5 or 6 people that I know that have got Canon 600D cameras now.
Yeah, weirdly enough, I was playing with it today, and I was taking pictures of an echidna. I found an echidna in the backyard, and I was wandering around trying to play with the kid was trying to play with the f-stop and the ISO
Yeah,
and
I need
the
to do a video
angles.
about sort of breaking down how you take photos and shoot film,
Mm.
because it's you'd
But
think
it's
there
weird
would.
because once I worked out, like going through it with you I went through it with you in chat on the other night,
Hmm.
and then going through it with like that, I then started fiddling with it. And I've taken, I've done what David Darius and you both said the same thing, like going through it and trying to, like how you learn how to weld, right? So you learn how to MIG weld by starting with, you know, 20, 10% under what you're supposed to do, right? Smack in the middle and then 20% above what you're supposed to do in terms of like welding. And you work out where the welding is and what you're doing, and you fiddle with it from there. Why is this welding doing what I've got to do? Where am I in the curve? Now I change material and I do the same thing again. They keep building up a base of knowledge to do it. But if you do the same thing with a camera,
Yeah,
you're sitting there and you're going, okay, well, once you know where the switches are, and once you figure out where to put your hand so you can swap the ISO, swap the f-stop, you can change the timer settings on the camera. You can do all that with like 3 button movements, holding your thumb down and moving your finger around. You can hold the button to get f-stop, slide a thing, change the thing on, and then press another button that's underneath to change your ISO. So it's all literally underneath your thumb and underneath your finger. But then it's like all you got to do is compose a shot and sit there and go, okay, I've composed a shot. Now I'm going to take one at this f-stop, one at this f-stop, one at this f-stop, and just work the way all the way through, change the ISO, work all the way through. And very quickly you work out where the picture sits
yeah.
and what you want to do.
I mean, you need with photography and film, you need to get that sort of like comfort with focus, get shots in focus, and then there's the artistic things. I mean, I know one of the things that photographers hunt for is that blurry background, professional photography look. And that's almost accidental. If you look at photos from the 60s and 70s, you'll see that the background is blurred out a little bit. And then you see the artistic shots where you're trying to take a portrait shot where the person is in focus and their background is kind of blurred out. And if you remember from school photographs, in the background they'd have this sort of like sky patterned, cloud sponged onto the background so that it would automatically glow blurry the second it was out of focus, because you're focusing on the subject. And in filmmaking, the idea of racked focus, where one thing is in focus at the start of the shot and then a different thing is in focus to highlight the importance of that thing to the telling of the story. So the way you do that, the background thing, which is the thing that photographers hunt for, is called bokeh. And
spell that for me now. I'm not gonna work that. Bokeh.
It's BOKEH. And it's the blurring out of a background. So this way cinematographers learn to put the background further behind the actor than it is necessary to be. So you never see actors filmed up against a wall unless it's absolutely necessary. They're always 2 or 3 feet away from the wall, so the wall blurs out, so the audience's attention is basically focused on the actor, because it's the only thing you can see clearly. So there's a language to film. Tension can be built up depending on the angle of the camera. The angle of the camera up towards the subject indicates that the viewer is powerless or that the subject is powerful, and an angle down means that the subject is less powerful. A slight angle increases tension because people physically become tense when something is off kilter. So there's a thing called a Dutch angle, which is a sort of 30 to 45 degree angle, where everything's out of kilter to basically impress on the audience the tension of the situation. That sometimes the camera is in a place as if you were watching the scene in real life, you would have to be hidden, or you're above or looking down on something, like you're seeing a clandestine thing. And these are all sort of like theatrical techniques, to emphasize a facet of the story that's being told. Things like in silent movies, the good guy always enters from the left hand side and the bad guy always enters to the right. Because we read from left to right, progression for us, in the West anyway, is from left to right.
That one.
So when the bad guy comes in from the right, you've got the good guy, and you're basically saying the bad guy is the obstacle of the good guy. The good guy, in order to progress, like the visual metaphor is that you've got to progress. And sometimes these things are introduced, subconsciously. If you watch Star Wars, where Obi-Wan Kenobi is fighting Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi comes in from the left. and he's wearing lighter colours than Darth Vader.
Yeah.
There's a very good reason for that. It's a scene setting subconscious thing. You don't even have to be able to speak English to understand who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. You know, it goes beyond the language and beyond the script. You know, it's just like those are techniques in filmmaking. Writing dialogue that's believable. You know, making things, you know, feel more comfortable or less comfortable for the viewer. So there's a lot of that. But he does cover most of it in that filmmaking video. And the filmmaking video, yeah, that's 3 years of film school. Now the rest of film school is all about networking and, you know, being fast tracked into the industry. And that's a different level of value all on its own. If you wanted to be a filmmaker, going to film school will get you those connections and plug you into the industry at a low level, but you'll start to do more professional work. And without that sort of networking, it's very hard to get anywhere in filmmaking. Not impossible,
just difficult.
But if nothing else, from film school, you'll meet up with people that want to make the same films as you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I've done a few shoots now, you know, for other people or helping out other people, and it does take forever. I've got a few.
Yes, it's not a quick thing.
A few in inverted commas commissions, where people that obviously aren't going to pay me because they haven't got any money, but would like me to do a few bits and bobs. So, you know, I want to do those, so I've got a bit of a portfolio. At least I can see how I've progressed and got better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you want to know how to make films, start making films.
Yeah. Yeah, and a good place to start is that reference video, which is just like, you know,
it's a good reference video. I mean, you could could do that whole course with nothing more than your mobile phone and a little tripod.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if your mobile phone's got a camera on it, and all of them have, and it's got the capability to take videos, and you understand the limitations of those videos, because the reason that you can only really use a super high-end phone for making a lot of films is the shutter wobble, in that when you get like a jelly roll effect when you move the camera, so you haven't got very dynamic filming. Whereas on a DSLR that also shoots video, or a proper video camera, that's kept to an absolute minimum. So you can move the camera relatively quickly. But yeah, beware of falling into the trap of buying lots of gear. I've had to ban myself from buying photography gear for a bit, because I spent a fair chunk of money last month on photography gear, including my another camera that's probably a little bit worth having is the EOS M.
Yeah,
and it's essentially a T3i without a flip out screen. But there's ways around that. I intend to have a crack at installing or running Helicon DSLR controller, which is a free app, to my mobile phone, and then having a USB cable going from my mobile phone to my camera, and then I'll be able to remotely control the focusing on autofocus and stuff. So yeah, that's a thing I'll be doing a video on for the culture, because there'll be a whole sort of like this is how to make some media or some ideas to get you up and running. But if you start to build up a collection of camera gear, you do need to organise it really well. There's no good having it if you can't find it.
Yeah.
But it is reassuringly, it's a lot like Lego, in that there are some very standard fittings for almost everything.
Everything, yeah. And once you do that, it's just sort of...
You know, same thing with action cameras. When you buy an action camera, you get like a whole bunch of little mounts for it. And if you buy more than one action camera, you end up with like a whole box of stuff. So there's a few action cameras that I want to do a few reviews on and demonstrate some of the really terrible ones. Because there are some really cheap ones on eBay, but universally those are pretty awful.
Yeah.
But yeah,
no, I got given. I think the one that did it on was the Is that my mobile phone doing that, or your mobile phone doing that?
What?
I think it's mine. me. My mobile phone is rattling in my ears. I made the ridiculous mistake of having a tripod bought for me, and it's very cheap, and I hate it. Trying to buy a tripod, buy a second-hand one, and make sure it's a decent one.
Well,
I'm trying to remember the name of the tripod that I can.
is it one of those aluminium ones?
Yeah, it's horrendous.
They're okay as long as you don't have it too high.
This one is like you can't even lock the damn thing. That's how cheap it is.
Yeah.
One I was going to suggest people look at is a Manfrotto. I don't know how you say that properly.
Yeah,
M-A-N.
Manfrotto tripods are generally really, really good.
Yeah.
The only downside is that they are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with one. If you want a cheap, 20 quid, 40 Australian dollars or $30 American tripod, Velbon do some okay tripods. They're not fancy. They're for DSLRs really. They'll be okay for an action camera or mounting a phone to. But if you just need a tripod in the short term, the Velbon ones, maybe spend 30 quid. The EF61 is slightly more stable than the ES51, but they're on YouTube for like 20 quid. I'll just do a quick search on eBay. Like they're 20 odd quid new.
Yeah.
Is it EF?
No.
Let's have a look.
If you buy a good one though, you can always use it for your spotting surf as well, which is always nice.
Is it DF51? I will find it shortly.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're aluminium. They're not the best.
Yeah.
Most fantastic tripod. They're pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's DF. Yeah, the DF51. You can buy it new at Argos or anywhere like that for 35 quid, but you can get them super cheap second hand. Most people upgrade out of it, but the 51 or the 61. Here we are. EF61. This is the one that I initially bought. It's a solid one, $39.99, brand new from Argos. And it's solid and chunky, and it's got a little slight locking mechanism. You can tighten up. It's got a pan and tilt head for a standard camera and a quick release thing. It's nothing fancy, but it is at least reasonably stable. So they're pretty cheap. I mean, if you can get a Manfrotto full-size tripod and your budget stretches to it second-hand or whatnot, then go for that. But make sure it's in nice condition and it doesn't look too knackered, because some of the older tripods might well be a Manfrotto, but you want something at least a fairly modern design. But you can get like Velbon video tripods and stuff like that, but they're all the same sort of, size and thing. I mean, if you've got an actual camcorder that you're wanting to use, then you probably want a fluid head video tripod. But they're not. Velbon's an okay make. If you can afford a more expensive one, then go for it. But if you need one in the short term, a Velbon tripod, anything from about a 41 through a 51 through to a 61, those are all going to be good, very boring tripods.
What we want. Good, very.
Well, I think I've got a 51 and a 61, and the 51 is slightly more flimsy, but it'll do the job as long as you don't kick it around too much. And it's got the little maximum stretchers for the legs, and you can put like a little lightweight sandbag or a little polythene bag with a couple of cans of tomatoes in it, just to weigh it down and steady it a little bit more. Or you can put your rucksack on, over it or something, just to hold it in place a little bit more. But yeah, no, they're an okay tripod. It's what I've been using indoors and outdoors to film stuff.
Mm.
So you don't really need to spend a lot on the accessories, but just know what you're looking at. If you see something like a tripod that's like $6 or $7 and it'll go up to 150 centimeters, you probably want to avoid it, really, because it's probably one of those aluminium ones, and you can bend those with your bare hands.
Yeah,
you can just bend the legs in half and snap them, and it's just not stable enough for you to put something that's relatively expensive like a camera on top of it. And they just wobble around far too much. I mean, those little super flimsy tripods are okay for an action cam or a voice recorder. You know, like a secondary tripod. If you just wanted a tripod for a light or something like that, just to hold it on your subject, then yeah, that'd probably do it. And lighting's another thing. That's another 25% of your retention of viewers. You know, like sound is 50%. The lighting is about 25%. You know, you need to make sure that your exposure's good and that things look natural and they don't look washed out. So yeah. Oh, when you open up the whole filmmaking thing, it tends to get a bit weird.
Yes. Yeah, you shouldn't get people wasting their money on things they don't need.
Yeah, me included.
It's a bit like everything else in the world.
Yeah, well, I've got like a giant collection of lighting stands now. I've got about 8 lighting stands, 2 backdrop holders, 4 lights, you know, all sorts of crazy shit. I was going to buy another couple of LED lights, but then I thought, nope, I have actually got all this stuff knocking around. So I'll be trying to recycle the stuff for the studio rather than spending any more money on it.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, so because all of the classes have gone out, like all my classes are on online anyway now, like they already were, but everyone else has gone on to online stuff, and I weirdly found the setting in Zoom, which allows you to set a false backdrop.
All right.
So it picks up as long as there's a decent change between you and the thing behind you, and it'll pick up and it'll put a false backdrop on there, which is great if you've got a messy room like I do, and I have a false enough background that it works for me type thing. But weirdly enough, no one else ever sets it, so you get to like see people wandering around the backyard in the background type thing, and people doing stuff, and whatever else. Well, I have this, you know, I have pictures behind me, and whatever else. One of the tutorial support came in and said like, oh, you've got your backdrop set, and I'm like, yeah, you don't need to see my messy room. There's stuff everywhere type thing, and it's like, you know, not particularly clean. And I don't particularly need you people walk past behind me and do stuff. If anyone comes in, it's none of your business who they are type thing. Is, you know, they're here to talk to me, not to you. And the person turned and said, oh yeah, I tried doing that, and then I tried doing it with a green screen, but it didn't work very well because the green screen kept falling over, and I then remembered I had to try and organise the green screen. Like,
yeah,
that's right.
And that's why I want to put up my backdrop rail today.
Yeah.
So I can just clip a green screen up and just you know, muck around with some alternative backgrounds and set dressing and stuff.
Yeah.
But
all
yeah,
fun stuff to play with.
Yeah, I mean, you got to play with that sort of stuff. I mean, if you've been watching classic Doctor Who, like a lot of us have, you'll see that there's when you get towards the later Tom Baker stuff, they did a lot of stuff with green screen as soon as it became cheap enough.
Yeah. I mean, the other one that strikes me is every single foreign planet, right, is a quarry.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is, but every single time they go outside on a foreign world, it's a quarry.
Well, one thing is quarries have very few bystanders in them.
That is true.
You don't have other people. Although there was a very funny incident when they were filming Blake 7, and they were filming in this quarry, and there was an explosion that they hadn't set off, and Terry Nation sent a runner to go and find out what was going on and whether the quarry was active. And the kid came back and said, "I'm sorry, sir. It's Doctor Who's filming just round the corner." It's like the BBC for science fiction used quarries so much, especially the ones in Ashford and places that were just a short drive from London. But the reason for that was they were cheap to borrow, and they were shooting all outside stuff in 16mm. So that's very light sensitive. So you can only shoot it in the bright of the day. You want it you want it to at least feasibly be a different world. And you don't want bystanders ruining the effect. You don't want cars going by. They liked doing a lot of outside filming for Doctor Who at the time, and later on they went more studio based because the sound stages got bigger and you could build stuff more easily.
Yeah.
But it was just having a backdrop where action could occur and people would just ignore the backdrop, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, quarries were, 1970s sci-fi, but even if you look at movies and stuff, a lot of that takes place in quarries and
Yeah.
gravel pits and all sorts of places because there's no vegetation to give it away that it isn't Earth.
Yeah, what it is or what it's
Whereas if
doing.
you just go outside and you say, the magical planet of Thing, and there's a rhododendron bush, with its own sort of evolutionary sort of route that can only come from Earth type thing.
Yeah.
So it's always very difficult. You have to take out anything that could feasibly be from Earth, from the backdrop. And the quarry was an ideal way of doing that. They did do some colour washes and stuff like that to make it look slightly more interesting. But yeah, pretty much. But yeah.
Very cool. No, everyone should go watch Doctor Who. I'm sure everyone's got the Doctor Who thing out from last time, but it's on archive.org. If you just search up Doctor Who and complete series that comes up. Because I keep losing it. So people have to go and find it again. That was an interesting one. That happened in the Twitter sphere this morning was Neil Gaiman. Somebody put out a post. So the archive.org has put out, they've basically allowed anyone to borrow any book. Like you can borrow books through archive.org. So if it's under copyright control, then you can borrow it now, and there's no withholding period, and there's no 14 days, whatever. You can just basically borrow it until all this stuff goes away. They're saying until the 30th of June, but until, I can see it extending past that, so it'll be continued on past that type of thing. And Neil Gaiman turned around on Twitter and said, why are you drawing attention to this type of thing? Thanks for that. That was, this is horrendous. And it was a bit like, why does Neil Gaiman care? And I hadn't realised, of course, but, this person is complaining because they're not making enough money. And I did awfully feel like responding to Neil Gaiman by sending him a link to Cory Doctorow and saying, this is how you actually make money and you actually supply your fans.
Well, I mean, essentially, if you are any kind of Patreon for Amanda Palmer's music, you can download all of it.
Yeah.
She makes her money by her fans want to see her live, and her fans want to buy the actual, hard copy of whatever format.
Yeah.
Including me, embarrassingly. I went to Amanda Palmer's gig. My daughter bought me a ticket. We both went. It was one of the best gigs I've ever been to. But I also bought the double album of her tour. But she wasn't really bilking anybody. The signed copy of Amanda Palmer's album cost me 25 quid.
Yeah.
Which is, that was at the gig. So it's like, why wouldn't you buy that?
Yeah.
It doesn't cost. These are things that don't cost a lot to actually manufacture. But, you think, I will pay what it would be for a standard record. No problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what always does me about Doctorow's work, is that Doctorow, up until the last book, gave away everything for basically free. And so anyone can,
it's hard being a journalist that says it will never be easier to copy stuff than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then trying to slap some sort of copyright protection on your own work is pretty pointless. Yeah. But, the PDFs of all his books have been available pretty much as soon as the book's out.
Yeah.
And his point was, look, there is a system in place for people to buy my books if they want to buy a hard copy. The audio books are out there. He has a thing where you can, instead of buying a copy for yourself, you can buy a copy for a school. So it's in a school library for some kid to find it. Yeah. Oh, if you're listening to this and we're still rambling on, just go and read everything Cory Doctorow's ever written.
Yeah.
The guy's a genius.
It's on Craphound.
Yeah.
Craphound dot something or other. Craphound.com.
William Gibson's new Stub trilogy has started. What was it? The Peripheral is the first thing, and this whole alternate time travel type parallel jump of a near future. It's very good. But there again, I like all William Gibson stuff anyway. I liked the Blue Ant trilogy, and I liked I liked the two before, the Neuromancer trilogy and the Bridge trilogy. They're all very good. A little more accessible than Neil Stevenson, I find Gibson's work.
Yeah.
And Cory Doctorow is even more 5 minutes into the future. than William Gibson.
I think that's why I really like Cory Doctorow for that 5 minutes in the future bit. You know. I'm very conscious that we're going to run out of time. How long have we been recording for?
We've been recording for just over an hour, mate.
We're supposed to stop at an hour, mate.
Well, I wasn't watching, but anybody knows that if you come and talk to me, you best bring a sandwich and a drink, or you'll die of starvation halfway through. Yeah. So should we leave it there, and we'll postpone it and more rambling. So today we've talked a bit about filmmaking. We haven't really talked about the coronavirus, but everybody else is talking about the coronavirus. So this is time off from that.
Do we need to talk about the coronavirus? No.
Nah. Apart from people's idiocy. But if you want to see people being stupid in a time of coronavirus, just step outside your front door, and you can see it all the livelong day.
True.
Okay.
Well, I will see you later and soon, and I hope everyone has a lovely week, and we'll catch them all sooner than later.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And we'll see you on the flip side.